Worlds Collide. I'm the kid JW. That's Miss Diva Talks.
What's up, y'all?
And this is the racist history behind tipping.
Because tipping has gotten out of hand.
So start the video, I guess.
For over a century, tipping has ingrained itself into American culture. What was once considered a largely European practice has now been fully adopted by Americans and, unsurprisingly, taken to a completely different level. But did you know that the practice of tipping is rooted in racism and enslaved African Americans? Well, today we're going to talk about it. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemyhistory.com. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on Buy Me Coffee on my Patreon in the description below. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. But without further ado, let's get started. The concept of tipping or offering a gratuity has existed for hundreds of years and differs slightly across cultures, tracing its roots back to the 16th century Tudor period of England, where overnight guests typically would present veils as tips to their host's household staff to show appreciation for their service. As time rolled on, during the 16th to 17th centuries, tipping evolved and became customary in English coffee houses. As the legend goes, eager for swift service, they began to drop coins into a box marked to ensure promptitude, abbreviated to TIP. This is widely believed to be the origin of the term tipping. But it's most likely a myth. So what's the reality? The 17th century European feudal period contributed significantly to shaping today's tipping culture. Tipping was almost non-existent in the United States before the Civil War, but it was commonplace for European nobility to reward service workers with an additional sum of money or a tip. This practice eventually made its way across the Atlantic, arriving on American shores in the late 19th century when wealthy Americans in the 1860s discovered the tradition. Wanting to seem autocratic, these individuals began tipping upon their return to the United States. However, in the years before the Civil War, America was divided into two parts, the North, which was more industrialized, and the South, where slavery had formed the backbone of their economy. The South benefited heavily from the unpaid labor of enslaved Africans. After the 13th Amendment was passed in 1865, marking the end of slavery and led to a period known as Reconstruction. This phase was not only about freeing formerly enslaved African Americans, but assimilating them into American society. However, these issues started to take new forms, one of them being the tipping system that was introduced during the Reconstruction era. When tipping was first introduced to America, it was met with fierce opposition and was derided as un-American. They saw it as a form of bribery and belittled the workers and felt that it was unfair and classist. They questioned.
But it still is. Is it not?
I mean, as far as I don't know. I don't think so.
Why individuals who were already financially struggling were expected to pay an additional tip after their meal. In the 1860s, these anti-tipping views were so strong that they traveled their way back to Europe, and it's one of the reasons why tips are generally unexpected in European restaurants
But
today.
I would say this.
Exactly.
True, but I would say that. I guess here is because we're used to tipping. It's expected. Hey, you go out to eat, you tip.
Thanks to this.
Yeah, but I look at it from from a business standpoint. We're all business owners here. It's like, well, hey, this gives you an opportunity to earn your keep. I can pay you. What's tipping in Michigan? Like $5 an hour. What's the regular rate? $5 an hour for
I have no idea, but whatever it is not enough.
So they look at it like, okay, hey, we'll pay you like $2 or $5.
An hour.
Yeah, an hour, and then you'll make most restaurants you'll make more in tips than you would.
Not necessarily.
Depending what restaurant and where.
Yeah, all of that is dependent on good tips.
Yeah.
And going home with
So
a
if
nice
you're
amount of money.
So if you're a nice, friendly waitress or waiter, cool. You walking away with a nice tip and walking away with good. $200 or $300 at the end of the night.
Yeah.
And still, I'll say mine to the end of the video.
Okay.
Despite this, tipping continued to increase. Still, there were many who were not happy with the tradition. In 1915, 6 states temporarily banned tipping. In 1918, the state of Georgia declared tips as a commercial bribe, meaning that tips given to influence service were against the law. Despite these controversial beginnings, tips continued to be practiced in the southern United States. This adoption across the country was accelerated due to prohibition. In 1920, There was a nationwide ban on alcoholic beverages that had a ripple effect across society. Prohibition meant that many hotel owners changed their bars into lunch places and started serving food to everybody, especially because these meals were ordered from a menu. The owners didn't mind tipping because they no longer saw it as a bribe. Eventually, tipping became socially accepted as restaurateurs soon realized they stood to benefit from the opportunity to subsidize their worker pay with guests' extra money. Due to this, tipping caught on nationally, even in the North, and today it is an expected part of American society. While the tradition of tipping was started by the upper class and copied from Europe, when this custom reached America, it took on a disturbing element for the black community. Those that didn't
Of course it did. Of course it did. Sure how?
end up sharecropping would end up working menial positions. These jobs paid very little, and the staff was expected to survive on the tips they were given by their customers. It's assumed that because they were newly freed slaves, they should be appreciative of any income, even if it wasn't guaranteed. These industries saw tipping as a chance to manipulate the system and essentially continue the institution of slavery by paying their black workers only in tips. Despite the official abolishment of slavery, black individuals continued to struggle with limited economic and social rights. Tipping was just another way to cover up and continue slavery in a different form,
Yep.
reinforcing the idea that black labor was not worth a fair wage and reinforcing black workers to rely on the inconsistent generosity of mainly white customers. George Pullman.
Where? Where was the sense in that? Just saying.
I'm just here for the video.
Oh,
and the
of course you
paycheck.
are.
I'm just here for the check.
Established the Pullman
Nah.
Company in 1859, offered high-class sleeping cars for passenger trains. Starting in 1868, he hired on African-American men, many who were formerly enslaved, as porters. Pullman Company believed that they were ideal for the role of servants. He initially paid them extremely low. They only earned $27.50 a month in 1916. That is roughly about $814 today and would be about the equivalent of $10,000 annually. Despite this
Yes.
fact, they worked almost 400 hours a month. The working conditions were harsh and they were frequently mistreated. However,
But
So please,
okay.
okay, go ahead.
But that goes into the whole narrative of, let me dig into my crate here of intellectualness. It goes back into the whole thing of how the other people look at back in the day. Oh, because we're blacks, we can handle that harshness and that intense labor because they can't. So they'll put us in the harder labor areas because they feel like, oh well, they're made and strong, they can do this, well we're not. So that plays into that narrative, which is
Any way you put it, you're still devaluing
oh yeah, without doubt.
people simply because you can.
Yeah, without
And
doubt.
then the whole thing of, oh, I guess in the discussion of reparations,
Mm-hmm.
we're owed a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, even with this, you still found a way. You still found a way to be unfair towards people that don't look like you. You still found a way. And you're still finding a way today.
Pullman encouraged the wealthy passengers of these luxury cars to leave the men tips. Tipping had a substantial impact on the wage practices for African Americans, an impact that still can be seen today. It deepened the economic inequalities between the races, and it began a trend of not providing full minimum wage protections to tip workers. And this was a policy that heavily impacted the black community. Society also often labeled black workers as lazy, but expected white customers to leave them generous tips. It was believed that without tips, the serviceable African American workers would be extremely poor. Additionally, relying on tips for income made black workers heavily reliant on customer bias, creating a power imbalance that was very reminiscent of a master-slave relationship. The civil rights movement had a dramatic impact on labor laws and how black workers were perceived. Title VII, which is a pivotal part of the Civil Rights Act 1964, made it illegal to discriminate based on race, religion, sex, or nationality concerning jobs or salaries. This law also addressed tipping practices and forced restaurant owners to pay at least tip minimum wage to their staff regardless of how many tips they made. Unfortunately, despite the law's intentions, many tip workers, often African Americans, found themselves earning less than minimum wage, highlighting the persistent racial wage imbalances. Even with these issues, the African American community and civil rights activists welcome these legislative changes as a vital initial move to recognize the rights of black workers. Today, the way we tip in America has remained almost the same since the establishment of the federal minimum wage for tip workers during the New Deal era. Legislation passed in 1938 required employers to pay tip minimum wage, a wage that, including tips, would equal the federal minimum wage. As time passed, rules in the 1970s encouraged fair payment for restaurant staff. Presently, the federal minimum wage for tip workers is about $2.13, while the primary minimum wage is about $17.25. In the United States, tipping has become not just a custom, but an essential part of a server's income. Generally, patrons tip about 15 to 20% of their total bill as a thank you for good service. According to the Council for Economic Advisors, 98% of customers in the United States leave a tip, and Americans tip more money to restaurant servers than any other country in the world. Sadly,
Of course we do. Of course we do.
racial bias plays a factor that influences tipping behavior, particularly in America. There is an existing stereotype in the service industry that black people do not tip well. Studies confirm that this bias does impact earnings. A research study done by the Restaurant Opportunity Center United in 2018 revealed that black restaurant workers receive about 15 to 25% less in tip than their white coworkers. Similarly, a Cornell School of Hotel Administration highlighted that people are more likely to tip their service workers who share the same racial background. It states that black taxicab drivers get about 1/3 less tips than their white colleagues, and these studies underscore the impact of racial prejudice on tipped earnings. This skewed tipping practice is rooted in a long-standing racial stereotypes. Some people hold misguided beliefs that black people are economically disadvantaged and hence leave them smaller tips. Others feed into the stereotypes about attitudes or behavior of black people while dining out or using their services. This misconception creates a biased two-tier tipping system skewed against African Americans and does not reflect reality. However, there are ways that we can fix this inequality. There's been a huge push to get rid of the tipping industry altogether and instead pay workers a fair wage. This would lessen the wage gap and lower employees' reliance on the tipping system. Although change has been slow, more and more people are having conversations about racial inequality and getting rid of tipping altogether. But of course, there's a lot to do. But it is the legacy of slavery in America that turned the tipping system in the United States from a bonus or an extra on top of a living wage into the wage itself. Thank you. I'm your host, Country Boy. This has been One Mic History. If you like stories like this, you find more stories like this at OneMicHistory.com. Also, if you like to support the channel, you can do so on my Patreon, buy me coffee, and it's
All right, so I got my thoughts and whatnot because I got my thoughts.
Okay.
So from the film, I see it from both ends. On one, like for example, us, we were taught to always tip. Our parents taught our grandparents, our parents. It's been always taught that hey, when you go out to eat, you tip.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is not playing a race card here. You go out to eat, you see white folks tipping, black folks tipping, Mexicans tipping, everybody tipping. But then you also got the people who don't tip. Where I have, to me personally, I don't mind tipping. Because I believe hey, if you know, to the end of the day, you know me first and foremost. I don't go based off whatever that 10, 5, 10, 15, 2%. I don't go based off that.
Neither do I.
I go based off your service. And I know I may catch some slack in the comments because y'all people in the comments like to tussle. You know, I will say hey, if you're doing a good job, I'm not tipping you that because I think 20% is what the standard.
I think it's still at 15.
Oh, okay. And I think let's just say sake of argument, like for when we go out, our bill's $6 to $7, $80 if we go to our usual bar.
Not even that sometimes.
$60 at our usual bar. 15% of that is about $4, $5, $6. But I'm using my own
Yeah,
now.
you are. But continue.
But y'all get the point I'm about to make. So, but me, I'm always like, because she look out for us, she's good. Hey, here, you know, just like when we go out of town and whatnot on vacations or anywhere, we don't tip whatever the minimum is. We tip like, hey, you did good.
But that also plays into the point.
About that, yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Because me personally, I tip extra.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you already got that stigmatism of, oh, black people don't tip or don't tip well.
Yeah, and then also some places you got to share your tips in some places.
Exactly. So that's why sometimes I like to try to get my servers like Cash App or something like that or Zelle to just give it right directly to them so that they don't have to share it. Because that's another screwed up system.
Yeah.
Why does everybody have to share their tips?
Like some places, I know you got, like I know some restaurants, you got like the busboys and the waiters and the wait staff share their tips. You know, I know some places are like that, but it's like it goes to the point. Certain places you do not need tip. Like where I draw the line and feel not angry, but where I draw the issue at is where you got places like, for example, the Japanese spot we go to.
Yeah.
Or Chipotle, or anywhere in particular. Like, oh, here's your order. Do you want a tip? You're just the cashier. Like, I'm not. Like, if I'm not tipping you. You know, for what? I'm not tipping you. I'm not tipping.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's gotten out of hand.
It's out of hand.
I'm just here to pick up my food.
You didn't do nothing. You just, here you go. Thank you for stopping at such and such. I'm not tipping you if you're just spinning the iPad around.
Like that should be included in my food costs.
Right. Like I'm doing carry out.
Right. Like I'm not sitting down. Exactly.
Yeah, carry out. I should not have to tip. It should not even be an option for me to tip on the carry out because I am going in.
Yeah, I'm doing all the work.
Yeah,
I'm literally putting the order in myself. Yeah. You're not bringing it to me.
Exactly.
Like.
So yeah, it has gotten out of hand to where every single place it's like, oh, you want to tip? You want to tip? Because it's like it's out of hand. What's next? You gonna get put over by the cop? Here's your chicken. You want to add a tip to this? You mother. You know, so it's like it's out of hand.
Yes, it's getting too far out of hand.
You know, I get, but at the end of the day, it's like we're in that situation where if you pay everybody a livable wage, I'm putting.
Yeah, because the second they raise the wage, they raise the price of living. So we're all still screwed. So continue.
It's when if you pay everybody in your restaurant a livable wage, from a business standpoint, it's going to eat into their profit. So they got to raise their prices on the food that they sell to make up for the increase in wages, which therefore adds it on back to us, which keeps the cycle going. Yep. Because every business owner has to make money. Yep. So on the business tip, I get it because we're business owners. Yep. We understand the numbers. Mm-hmm. You know, but it's like the same. Like, all right, how much can I make and still it's a fine line between having your restaurant because the cost of food is through the roof. So it's a fine line of having a profit. Yep. And paying your wage. Yep. And still having money left over to save for the slow days. So it's that margin of error. Everybody is at the end of the day is still getting screwed. Yeah. No matter how you cut it or how you look at it. And I hate to be that person before we get up out of here. Even from the top, the people at the top getting screwed. Yep. Because as my stepdad always said, shit rolls downhill. So when at the top starts losing money, it's gonna roll downhill. Of course. Where the cycle's because it's gonna keep going. The bottom people it's gonna cut the heat because they gotta pay so the top can make their money again, and then our whole system of trickle down economics is horrible. Yeah. Above all. Take that away. Above all, because I rambled. Trickle down economics doesn't work. Tipping doesn't work. Let's fix it. Because the system is broken. It's not made for this society. It's not. The system is outdated. Yep. But that's a whole other conversation on how we can fix that. Exactly. So as always, Colliders, if you enjoyed this reaction, go ahead and hit the like button. Share with someone who you think would like it as well. If you want to check out this YouTuber's channel or this video for yourself, the links will be in the description below, where you can find me and the official JW's own YouTube channels as well. Did you have anything else you want to add? Nah. And as always, what we say over here as Colliders. A view is a view, and thank you for watching. Bye, y'all. Was that it? Yeah. Yes! Got it, man. Actually, the last part is engagement, but I'll let you have it. Oh, damn. Later, y'all. Bye.